it's Aaron here to show you a couple tips and tricks from my brewing setup. First tip and trick is going to be hoses. I have 4 hoses on my brew system. They are all the same length. The advantage of them all being the same length is that you can pick any one to make any connection. There's no specific hose for any specific task, and my system is fortunate that they're all relatively close. The one disadvantage is you may get one hose that's longer than needed, but better longer than shorter. My second tip is a pump remote. So the pump is connected to this power plug, which then connects to a power source. This power plug is controlled by this remote control. So there's no bending down to pick up the power, plugging it in. There's no switch on the pump. The pump is powered by this remote. Now, one tip within a tip here, do not put this remote in your pocket. You may press it bending over, your keys might hit it. Put it on a shelf. My third tip is organizational. I have taken all of the salts and water additions like Kaplan tablets, yeast nutrient, and the like, and put them into similar containers and specifically labeled so it's easy to tell which thing is which. They are available right here, as well as just generally all of the things I use for brewing are also right here, including one of my more favorite things, the best lighter you can have, a propane torch, push button actuated. Thanks for watching. Cheers.
Okay, homebrew hacks. Pegboard. Pegboard is your friend. Really easy to hang when you have hoses. If you use quick disconnects, hangs really nicely. Any spoons, ladles, you can actually get pieces that will hold siphons, funnels, spoons, filter packages, and it can save some space. Hold all your tools that you need, keg maintenance, brew system maintenance, anything. It works, saves some space, keeps things organized.
Hi, I've got 2 more quick tips. The first one is to have a small parts bin. When we brew, we have a lot of equipment, a lot of little pieces, and then if you don't, and it's easy to get organized, but it's hard to stay organized. And our little parts don't always make it back to the proper place, and then when you need them, you can't find them. And so this is my small parts bin. I've actually got a few of them, but for example, I've got little quick disconnect parts in here, a siphon clip, this carboy bung has not been put away, a knife, and various other parts. I've even got bins without bins. This little small parts bin has got little parts that go inside of here so I don't lose those. So that's my first tip. My second tip is when we're brewing, sometimes we face an emergency. You either want to brew based on just a kind of short notice, or something you critically need to brew is not there. And so when you're going into the local homebrew shop, when you're putting an online order in, think about what you might need and order an extra. For example, I've got some extra packets of versatile yeast, Nottingham, German Ale, W3470, a bottling wand, sometimes a bung gets lost in the carboy. I've got a spare airlocks brake. And so if you've accumulated at a very low expense a little bit of extra parts with each order, before you know it, you'll be able to brew anytime and to deal with just about any emergency. Anyway, hope that helps.
Tim Kane here for the Nordeast Brewers Alliance for our monthly meeting, some hacks. I've got a brew with a Brewer's Edge mash and boil unit I bought last year at a Black Friday special. And I was doing a Russian Imperial Stout, which had a 20-pound grain bill, and this unit has a basket inside here. You put the grains in. It's got a 16-pound capacity. So the hack that I did to work around that was to mash twice. I did 10 pounds of grain one day, put it into a sanitized carboy, and then a couple days later did the other 10 pounds. And when I pulled the grains out from that one, I added in the first mash and then boiled the combined and made a Russian Imperial Stout with kind of a workaround from the capacity there. I'm going to come and grab the camera. Before I had this unit, I used to boil or mash on brewing my stovetop, and as you can see, there's not a ton of room between the stovetop and the microwave, and I could only get kettles that would fit through there, so I was limited there. And I'm realizing now I could have actually done some of the same things if I had wanted to do a bigger batch, split it in two. So, and then the other thing I've been doing with the same batch, I was doing a little experiment. I was at the hardware store and I saw these chips for smoking on the grill. These are pecan. I also got hickory and cherry, and I thought I'd try a little experiment with the wood aging. So I've got a couple of small carboys here that I made up, and I'm experimenting with. I've got three different kinds of wood. I boiled the wood and put it in those, and then put the beer in on top of those. So I've got, you can see, let's see, this one's pecan, and I've got the wood in there. You can see this is a pure leaf tea, and the rest of these are too. These are like 59 ounces. So what you do is you just take the cap and you can drill through. This is a 7/16 inch drill, but is it focusing? Oh. So just drill through, and then you can jam the caps in there, or the airlock into the cap. And I usually put electrical tape around that and around the cap. And then you get a half-gallon carboy, basically. You can get 4 or 5 bottles of beer out of that, and just so it's a nice little test to see if it's something you want to brew later on, or try that, which wood would work. I've done it with dry hops or other things too. So. And then the fun part with this is that when you're done and you've bottled your beer, you can just take the cap off, save it, wash it, and the carboy is disposable. You can just throw it away and buy another bottle to drink and then use later on. So they're disposable. There's no cleaning involved at all. So that's it for me.
Silicone tubing sight glass. So this one came about because I broke my sight glass. Long sits with PBW or other cleaners. Not fun for these. So with a 1/4 inch barbed elbow, silicone tubing, using the same eye bolt, and just a nylon fitting to keep the tubing from sliding down, you have a sight glass that won't break. Everything fits tight, clear, and so far so good. But this came about from, if you're like me and run a lot of cleaner through, maybe let it sit, the poly sight glasses can crack, break, and this is really easy to maintain.
This is a floating dip tube called a keg buoy, B-U-O-Y. When I got this, at first it didn't work that well. The end that the beer goes into kept coming out of the water because the tubing is kind of stiff. So what I did was I took this S-hook from Menards, a stainless steel S-hook, hung it on the ring, and now it always keeps the tube submerged. So if you have one of these and you have that problem, add some weight to it somewhere. It doesn't have to be exactly like this, but it just seems to need a little extra weight to keep the inlet for the beer submerged.
Okay, my tip is taking a sample from a keg when you don't have it in your kegerator, you don't have it hooked up, you just want to take a quick sample, whether it's after you fill it up and you want to take a gravity reading or something else like that, or in this case, I croissaned this keg because I had some diacetyl I want to make sure that it's all gone. So I have this tiny little piece of a ball lock connected to a little picnic tab here, and this just allows me to take a quick sample anytime I need it. So first we're going to take a spray bottle, sanitize both parts of my equipment here. We're gonna give this a connection. And I'm gonna hook this up to CO2 just because it's pretty full, and as soon as I open this up, the head pressure is gonna reduce. So I wanna make sure I get enough head pressure so that we keep everything good. So put some head pressure on there, and then now the only problem with this short little thing is that you're gonna get a ton of foam, but you just wait a little while, that foam will disappear, and you can taste it. All right, that's my tip.
So just like cold side oxidation, cold crashing sucks. Air right through your airlock and into your fermenting beer, which can cause cold side oxidation. My solution for that is a very, very eloquent a DIY that I did, a quick fix that involves taking a small length of tubing. I've got stainless steel here because I had a whole bunch lying around. You can use the end of an old racking cane or anything that fits into a bung. You can use whatever size bung so long as your tubing fits into the hole in the center of it. Nice and tight, you want that to be airtight. Then you go to the dollar store and you pick up a Mylar balloon, cut the bottom of that Mylar balloon off. There's usually a little check valve in there, so you gotta cut around that thing to where the balloon is fully open. Then you take some tape, you can use duct tape, you can use masking tape like I did, and you secure the end of that Mylar balloon very tight against the open end of your tubing. Now you've created what we call the balloon lock. At the end of fermentation, you can throw this on and collect naturally produced CO2. You gotta squeeze all the air out first. And then when you cold crash, it sucks in the CO2 and not ambient air. You can also fill this thing direct from a tank. I've done that numerous times as well. It works really well, reducing the risk of cold side oxidation. And that is my quick fix, the balloon lock. Cheers.
Hi, that was a great tip. Cold side oxidation is definitely a concern, and one of the times that there's an opportunity for cold side oxidation is when you're trying to gelatin fine in a keg. And if you open the keg to pour in the gelatin, some of the susceptible styles of beer may become oxidized. And so I've got a solution which I developed a few years ago that I'm calling, maybe 6 years ago, that I'm calling Chino's Gelatin Cannon. And so the concept is this: we want to shoot the gelatin into the keg using CO2. And you don't need a lot of stuff to do it. So the first thing you need is you need one of these water bottles. You're kind of looking for the type of bottle. It's small. What's critical is it's the type that looks like a Pepsi or Coke bottle where it's got the full threads rather than the really thin cap. You're gonna need one of these, which is a carbonator cap. They're about $8 or $9 on Amazon. I like the type that's got the barb on it. That's not necessary. If you've got the barb, you're gonna wanna put a piece of tubing. Now, frankly, I made mine a little bit too short. Didn't have enough tubing, but you wanna get it to stretch all the way to the corner of the bottle if you can. And then besides the keg that you want to shoot gelatin into and your CO2 draft system, what you're gonna need is a jumper, which is simply a piece of tubing with two quick disconnects on either side. One of them can be any type of ball lock QD because these carbonator caps typically accept any type of ball lock QD. And then in my case, you want a gas QD on the other side. In my case, I've got pin lock kegs, so I got a pin lock QD here. And so the process is pretty simple. You take this bottle and you put your hot gelatin solution in here. You're gonna wanna keep the solution below about 140 degrees because that's the point at which this PET plastic starts melting. The next thing you're gonna do is you're going to lay the carbonator cap and I'm gonna give it like a half turn here with the tubing right in there. And what I wanna do is I wanna squeeze all this air out of here almost until the gelatin is leaking out a little bit. And now I'm gonna crank down this cap. I've squeezed all the air out. Oh, there's a couple drops there, as you saw. By the way, I'm not using blue ice flavored Jello. This is just colored water for demonstration purpose. I'm losing a little bit of gelatin here. It's not a big deal. I think I've got this cap pretty tight now. And I've got all the air out of it. So what I'm gonna do here now is, this is the concept. I want high pressure here. It's gonna go through my through my jumper and into the keg, which must be at low pressure. So to be sure, let me check the pressure on my keg. I'm gonna take this release. I've got no pressure in there whatsoever. That's good. These bottles are theoretically good for up to 8 volumes of CO2. I do not recommend that. And so I'm going to go, 30 PSI. I mean, anything which is higher than the keg pressure is gonna be enough to shoot the gelatin into there. And so it looks like I've got some pressure here at about 40 PSI. It's quite a lot of pressure. I don't know how that happened. There we go, okay. So, 30 PSI, I'm gonna go ahead and connect that here. As you saw, that bottle is inflated instantly, and there's nothing in there except CO2. If you really wanna be anal about this, you can open this up, squeeze the air out again, and do it 2 or 3 times and purge that headspace. Now, it's a simple matter of, assuming that I've gotten this all tight, I can connect my ball lock disconnect here, and I need to, and of course I'm gonna need, it's helpful if you have some way to relieve pressure, but it's not necessary. When I go like this is just gonna shoot into there, assuming that there we go. So I had to give it a little bit of squeeze because my tubing was not there. Normally you would see this kind of shoot all the way in there, but here we go. The pressure caused all that gelatin to go into the keg. I disconnect it and I'm all set. So I hope that tip was useful. Happy brewing.
My kegerator out in my workshop, and an easy solution for a drip tray. It's actually magnetic tool holder, and I just cut the back of a vent grate off in the back, painted it black. Not the most beautiful, but it's really easy to use, sticks right to the kegerator, and was a whopping about $8 to make that drip tray to fit under here and keep drips off of my floor.
Hey guys, this is Olin Sudduth. If you've run into me online in forums or in blogging, then you probably know me as Homebrew Dad. If you've used any of the calculators or whatnot at brewunited.com, you've been to my website, thanks. So a buddy asked me to record a couple of tips. If you know me at all, if you've run into me at all, you know that sea malts are my jam. Let's say you've got a recipe where normal human amount, you've got a pound of C60. Not one of my recipes where you might have 2 pounds. But anyway, one thing that you can really do to dress it up, really bring out a lot of flavor, a lot of character, is to layer those sea malts. Next time, instead of doing just a pound of C60, try half a pound of C40 and half a pound of C80. What you get is there's a whole spectrum of flavors in those sea malts. Your lowest numbers are really more just sweet, but then you get caramel and you get more intense flavor. As you get into the darker malts, you get raisin, you get burnt sugar flavors, a lot of real interesting character that you can add to your beer. So don't shortcut it. Consider putting 2 different sea malts in pretty much anytime you have a beer that's going to benefit from some of that caramel flavor. You'll be really happy with the results. Also, by the way, don't skimp out and get cheap American sea malts. Get British sea malts, Crisp, Simpsons, Baird's. I promise you'll notice the difference. Second tip I want to share is a nice, easy, lazy shortcut. I see people talking all the time about pulling samples and my sample tube and how do I get enough beer out and what do I do with that beer and then I have to waste that or no. Look, the easiest thing to do is take your hydrometer, you've sanitized it. Once you've chilled your beer down, before you pour it from the kettle into your fermentation vessel, your bucket, your carboy, simply float that hydrometer right there in the kettle. Let it settle out. You can always tip your kettle up to a 45-degree angle if you need to, if you don't have quite enough liquid in there to float it. And there you go. Easy OG. Same thing when it's time to package. You can sanitize that hydrometer again, and then float it in either your bottling bucket or in your keg, and there you go. You've got your final gravity, and there's no dispute, there's no worry, there's no problems with samples left over. Easy stuff. And yeah, I know some people cringe. Oh my gosh, well, you've just exposed the beer to more contamination. Look, man, if you can't sanitize a super smooth glass non-porous hydrometer, then how on earth are you sure that you can sanitize your fermentation vessels, your kegs, your tubes? You got bigger problems. Try this out. Saves you time, saves you effort, makes it easy to get your gravity readings. And that's what I got today. Hey, good luck. Happy brewing, guys.
Homebrew hacks for those who are like me and use probes for your temperature gauges, a couple of bungee cords, and all of these can koozies that we get everywhere you go. Makes for great insulation and will keep that probe in place and tight. I have it on a keg here that's continuing to carbonate naturally, but you can put it on fermenters. Works really well if you have like a brew bucket. Has worked on glass and everything, but it's really quick, easy way to keep those probes in place and right against the vessel.
Hey Nick, that was a great tip about controlling temps. I've got one for controlling temps in a keezer. It's so important to connect your temperature probe to a stable mass, but you might not want to connect it to a keg because you'll be moving it back and forth. So for this tip, all you need is a temperature controller like this Inkbird, a can of something, maybe a beer that you don't plan to drink ever, and some sort of koozie. This thick foam type is nice. So are these types that wrap around, they're pretty thick. I don't recommend a thin one like this. So I'll let this headphone jack act like a temperature probe. You just stick it in here like this, put the can of beer here, and it's that simple.
So here's a super easy and cost-effective build for a stir plate from home. You can make this for usually less than 20 bucks, and it works pretty well. As you can see, there's a nice vortex going on the stir plate right now. It's also got a variable control on it, so if you wanted to dial that down and slow it down, if maybe you weren't trying to stir it as vigorously, you can do so. But it's a real simple build, and it's quite easy, and the parts are all available on Amazon. So I'll just show you what this thing looks like. Obviously, you've got your stir bar inside of the flask, but really all this is just an old wine box that I got from a liquor store. And here's a couple of parts, and here's what it looks like on the inside. So obviously on the outside, you've got a on-off toggle switch. You've also got a rheostat that controls the variability of speed. You've got a computer fan that is hooked up and repurposed, and these things on the top of the fan are just rare earth magnets that I took off of an old hard drive that I had sitting around. The wiring is just really quite simple. The toggle switch, using a couple of alligator clips, I'm sorry, not alligator clips, but a couple of clips, go on to the power source directly to the back of the rheostat, then gets connected to the fan over here, and then all I did to build it up to make sure it was the right height is I just took some screws, screwed it into the fan, and set it to the height that it was most appropriate to get that spin bar moving. And then also, obviously, the last thing is just a power source of some kind, and this is just a repurposed power cable that I used and spliced it and put it back in and connected it right here into the power supply. So pretty simple build, cost effective, less than 20 bucks.
working with DME can be a pretty messy situation. As soon as the steam from the boil hits the DME, it clumps together, turns into a real cotton candy, sticky-like mess. An easy way around that is to use something that's easily submersible in water, like a metal measuring cup. And you add your DME, and then as it clumps together like this, you can just dump it right in the water and kind of use that to stir around a little bit. And that'll clear off any of the leftover sticky DME remaining in your cup. You can use a metal measuring cup, you can use a glass measuring cup, you can also use a ceramic bowl if you have a large amount of DME, but anything that's heat tolerant and can be submerged in water. There you go.
Tip on getting your yeast starter to cool quicker. I know many of you have made a yeast starter and then you've gone to put it in your sink, and the problem is once you start to fill it up, it starts to get a little wobbly, obviously because there's a lot of water in the sink. However, that's what keeps it to cool down quicker. Saw somebody do this years ago. I thought it was pretty clever. Just take a Home Depot bucket, one of these little HDX buckets. You got your sanitizer, your yeast, and all the stuff in there. Just set it right on top of your yeast starter. Makes it really convenient, and then you can continue to fill your sink up till it's really high. I just find that I get my yeast starters to chill down a lot faster when I do so. Easy and cost-effective trick.
Hi, I've got several tips here about sanitizer. So the most popular sanitizer used by U.S. homebrewers is Star San. Iota 4 is probably second most popular. And the manufacturers tend to lead you to believe that you need 5 gallons of this stuff to brew a batch of beer. Nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, I'm going to show you how 1 gallon of prepared sanitizer solution can last you 6, 7, 8 brews. And I mean from brew day all the way to packaging. And so it starts with a gallon of distilled water. This is about $1 at Walmart or Target. This has already been prepared as sanitizer solution. And what you're going to do, the second thing you're going to need is the sanitizer, of course. And lastly, you're going to want an oral syringe. And you can get these at any pharmacy. This one came from Target. Obviously, it's got the little logo here. And what you're going to do is you're going to open up the Star San. You're going to draw out the dosage for 1 gallon, which for Star San would be 6 milliliters for 1 gallon. And I'm just going to go ahead and inject that in here. And then you would kind of slosh it around. It's going to be pretty full when you're doing this for real, and so you want to make sure that you've got it evenly mixed. And now I've literally got enough sanitizer here. It's going to remain shelf stable for months and months, possibly well over a year. It'll keep its low pH and it'll remain crystal clear. Now what I can do with this is, the next tip is have spray bottles. Put the sanitizer in spray bottles. I like the ones from Home Depot. They're about $2, I think, and they just last forever. They're tanks, and they work great. Go ahead and fill your sanitizer solution into the spray bottle, and now this is going to last you a long time. When you need to sanitize stuff, really you can, for example, if I got some tubing, I can spray that side of the tubing. If I want to get the inside of the tubing, I go ahead and spray it in the tubing, like this. And then, take the tubing, if it's flexible tubing, just kind of slosh it back and forth, And there you go, it's sanitized. It's going to take about 30 seconds wait time on prepared Star San solution. Iota 4 is about a 2-minute contact time. But wait, there's more. The other thing I suggest you get are what they call tattoo wash bottles. And I don't know if you can see this, but what's neat about these is that the straw that draws up the sanitizer goes all the way to the bottom. So that means that you can kind of squirt from almost any direction. And this is great, for example, if you've got to refill airlocks, which is kind of always a pain and things that we tend to put off. Oh, this looks kind of low. There's a little bit of solution in there, Oh, here's another one. This one looks a little bit low. Let me squirt this. If you like to drink, and if you've got a draft system, and you drink beer from your tap, and you think, well, I'm not going to drink for a few days now. Maybe you're going to the cabin or something. You can go ahead and this will skirt literally upward, and there you go. It's kind of all rinsed out with sanitizer solution and clean. You can put your little brush plug in there and you're ready to go. The last tip I've got for you is something I developed about 7 or 8 years ago, which is, The S-shaped airlocks tend to keep the sanitizer longer, but even they go dry. I prefer the 3-piece airlocks. These go dry very quickly, but if you take these things, these are cotton pads that are used to remove makeup and for other purposes. I've got some that are out of the package right here. You grab a couple of them like this, fold them up, and you can go ahead and put them inside the airlock here. I might give it a little bit squirt to wet it down with my tattoo wash bottle again. Put the cap back on. This is remarkable because it'll literally last 10 times longer in terms of the evaporation rate going down to 10% of what it was. And somehow those layers of gauze keep the evaporation from happening as quickly. So anyway, I hope those sanitizer tips helped you. Happy brewing.
A really fun day project is to make your own mash paddle. And I just had to make a new one because mine snapped the other day. All you really need is a piece of lumber that's a little bit strong, you know, not like thick enough that it can hold up to some hard stirring. And then you need a jigsaw and a power drill, and simple as that. Basically, you just mark your template out on a piece of wood, you know, something like this, and then you mark what you want your paddle to look like that, with a pencil, and then you just cut it out with your jigsaw. The tip for drilling really clean holes is to use a small drill bit first, and you make your hole and this will act as a pilot hole. Alright, and then you take a Forstner bit, which is, they make really clean circular holes. You can see that. You take your Forstner bit and you go about halfway down. Let's see. And then you flip it over and drill from the other side. Alright, here we go. This is our finished hole, cleanly drilled on both sides. This is a 1-inch hole, which I think is a great size for mash paddles to do as your main holes, and then you can kind of fill it in with some smaller drilled holes around the bigger holes, but you get a lot of good circulation with your mash paddle that way.
Hey, it's Chino here with one last tip, and that tip is towels. What I've got here is a 5-gallon bucket of towels. When you brew, there are bound to be spills, drips, you know, all sorts of water or wort on the floor, and towels are exactly what you need. I always brew with this 5-gallon bucket of towels next to me, and they're available if you're like me. And every so often you manage to put 5 gallons of strike water into the mash tun and leave the valve open, then this is exactly what you need. Anyway, thank you for watching a video from me and Nick. Thank you to all the contributors, and happy brewing.